That's for a number of reasons. Well, firstly, it is that if somebody happens to miss the session, they can catch up and watch the session. Or if there's things you want to go back and re-look at or hear again, you can go and do that. And we'll provide you a link to the recording, and I'll explain where that is shortly. So, Kathy DeCoris is our program coordinator. Hello, Kathy. Can you hear us?
Certainly can. Hello, Ken. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Good. Thanks, Kathy. And Kathy's details are there on the screen. So if you have any issues with the management or logistics, or you've got any questions around that sort of part of the course, please get in contact with Kathy. She's always very happy to help out. A couple of things I mentioned there earlier, that this is Zoom webinar. And so our main way to communicate is through the chat. And we really encourage you to chat about things with everybody. So there's a little drop down there that you can make to go to everybody. If there's something you just want to say to the host and panelists, you can do host and panelists. But we do like a bit of discussion going on in the background. We can't be all together in person, so a bit of chat always works well. Now, also, don't wait for us to say, does anybody have any questions? Because we'll keep moving along, and by the time you've typed your question in, we'll be moved along. So type it in as you think of it, and if it gets covered in the content, we just won't relay that one onto the presenter. We have a learning management system. Now, hopefully a lot of you have already accessed the learning management system. It's important that you do have access to the learning management system. We house a lot of the material in there, and well, you need to get your certificate out of there eventually and do little quizzes and things. So make sure you have access to that. If you haven't got access to that, you need to get in contact with Kathy. We've got access to the webinar so far, so you must have some sort of contact. So get back in contact with Kathy. But we'll take you live through the learning management system at the end of this one, so you can see what you need to do in there. Well, we have 4 wonderful panelists. Well, 3 and myself, I suppose I should say. We have Hafez Alavi covering the why, and I'll introduce Hafez a bit longer because he's running this session, so we get to spend a lot of time with him. We've got Bridget Doran on the who. Hello, Bridget. Where are you dialing in from?
Hi, everyone. I'm in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, North Island, New Zealand today. Great to be here.
Lovely. Thank you. And we've got Prue Oswin. Prue, where are you dialing in from?
I'm in Caloundra in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I am in Melbourne in Victoria. And as mentioned, Hafez is going to be leading this one, and I'll give a proper introduction there. But do pop into the chat now if you do have any admin, logistics, running of the course questions. Otherwise, I will jump in and introduce Hafez, unless anybody from the panel identifies anything I've missed in terms of the course.
I just mentioned the move of the hair in the photos from the top to the middle. I love that.
Thank you. Good. It's
That's
okay.
what you're going to end up with, Hafez. That's what you're going to end up with. Ken, we just also would like to acknowledge that we've got participants from all over Australia and New Zealand in this particular course. So thank you, everybody, from joining far and wide. And we also have some wonderful, I was going to say more international than New Zealand guests as well. But we do acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we are delivering the webinar and that you're attending the webinar from as well today.
Thank you, Kathy. Okay, well, let me introduce Hafez, who is going to lead us through this this first module, the why of race crossings. And many of you will already know Hafez because he's a super passionate and he's out there all the time supporting good road safety practices, sustainable mobility, and he is super passionate about that in his 20 years in the field of transport safety, engineering, safe system research, and then his work both in the public arena and private practice and academia. So he got his PhD from Monash University Accident Research Centre, investigating road safety and injury prevention. And following on from that, had a variety of roles, but one which was really leading a path forward in road safety was when he was director of the Safe System Road Infrastructure Program, which was a massive $1.5 billion investment in infrastructure in road safety for all road users. And that was, he was with the TAC, but it was working collaboratively with Vic Roads Department of Transport and others. So we're really excited that Hafez is going to give us this why and give us the big picture and really give us some tools for business cases and how we can present the advantages of raised crossings. And I will be in the background moderating, so I'll be monitoring the chat and jumping in and asking Hafez questions as we go, but he'll take us on a nice journey. So over to you, Hafez.
Oh, fantastic. And thank you, Ken, for a very generous introduction. It's great to be around you and other people here. Before starting, I want to mention that in the previous round of the course, what energized us was the amount of participation and ideas we received from the crew. So any course would be as amazing as you participate in. So please participate and share your ideas and all that. Cool. So today I'm going to give you a sort of the helicopter view of the course. So through this course, we're going to go through the why, the where, the how, the who, and that will be a pyramid of sort of intervention. But at the first, we're going to give you the high level picture, very specifically addressing one significant question here. What approaches and frameworks do we have for raised pedestrian crossing? And why is this important? Because at the end of this module, what I want to encourage you to do is go out and run mass action raised crossing interventions. We have done it in Victoria, as Ken mentioned, and we have done it other places, and we think they are really, really good for a variety of reasons. So firstly, there are area-wide pedestrian solutions. You do mass action, you cover a really massive area for your pedestrians. I will describe that in the first exercise. They are really cost-effective, can be cost-effectively delivered, and they help economic vitality by adding pedestrians and cyclists and all that to your areas. They're safe system compliant. We're going to talk about their effectiveness, and they help us to develop a business case for action. So you can put it in your active travel or safety business cases because they also have good BCRs. And also, they are very inclusive and cohesive. They help your community to include more vulnerable people, as Bridget will discuss. And also they have the cohesion of the society. Finally, they cover other societal concerns like climate action, quality of life. So let's get into it.
Before you jump into that, Hafez, what do you mean by mass action?
Beautiful. So Ken, by mass action, what we say is just imagine a suburb or a precinct or a CBD or a central activity district. You have an area. When you assess it, you might identify 50 locations where you can put in raised crossings. So when you combine them, combine the planning and design and investment and community engagement and all that, it becomes a mass action. That is what we mean by mass action. But thank you, that's a very, very good question. So 4 areas of the module today. So we're going to talk about why walking is important. We all know, but we're going to explore a bit more. We're going to put on the strategic lens and tell you what the strategic tools and lenses are out there for you to use and justify your mass actions. We share the strategic metrics you can use. And finally, we're going to have a quick practice and prepare you for the next module. So I'm really enjoying working with Prue and Ken and Bridge on this. You're going to see all the TikToks between us in these modules. Okay, why walking matters? 5 key reasons: economy, environment, health, society and social concerns, and transport. in terms of economy, mass action pedestrian treatments help to boost local businesses, and they bring societal costs in terms of road delivery, road maintenance, hospital care, and all that, because of the active travel improvement and safety improvement. They help the environment, needless to say, air quality, less noise, and more sustainable options. They help the health by increasing physical activity and reducing those disease and hospital care. They help more social interaction by us being out there walking and talking to our neighbors, our community, and also including children, elderly, and more vulnerable pedestrians amongst us. And finally, they help the mode shift in the transport system, and they cause less deaths and serious injuries by doing them because you reduce the speed. Now, first exercise or first action learning time. Could you please put in chat room what other benefits of walking do you envisage? Whatever other benefits you have, use in your business cases, your work, and all that.
Okay, so pop that into the chat, or are we going to use the Miro board?
I think we put it in chat, but I moved the Miro board to this one so I can see it better. So in the chat room, please.
Okay, we're starting to see some people popping ideas in there.
Okay. Less carbon emission. Yes, that sits really nicely in the environmental bit. Yes, that's it. Like, educating our children to build those habits. Yes, community interaction and sort of, social interactions. A walkable society is more democratic, more inclusive, more cohesive. Yeah. Transport equity, exactly. Yes, mental health, like any active travel, it helps physical and mental health, absolutely. Passive security. Ken, what do you reckon? How do you interpret passive security? What is your reading of that?
I'm not sure quite what is meant by that, but maybe if Joseph can expand on that a little bit, that would be good.
Yeah. Physical fitness and health, beautiful. So maybe less wear on your tires. That's actually saving costs to the family, to the household. So we have a number of other reasons we think walking is amazing. Exactly, lots of people looking around, that helps the security. Thanks, Joseph. So more walkable communities has more property, increased property value. One of the things we use to community engagement. They are more diverse and inclusive because more people can afford to live in them. Are more attractive because we get lots of artists to come out and do arts. And also they are more attractive because all the events and festivals that can go in the area because you have more walkability. We're going to hear more on inclusion from Bridget in module 3, so keep an eye for that. Now, let's go to action learning number 2. And for this one, I would like to encourage you and invite you to join our Miro board. So I stop sharing here, Ken, and I jump on the Miro board.
Okay, great. So now I think the link is in the chat as well. So you can just scroll back up a little bit in the chat if you haven't managed to get there. I'll pop it in again.
So Ken, let me so please ask your help here. So what might stop you or your family or your parents to walk more? What are the blockers?
Okay, so let's I think some people have used Miro boards before, but maybe a little explanation there. Affairs, I can see we've got quite a few people floating around in the Miro board. Yeah. And hopefully they're able to then put in their ideas, grab a sticky note, or just write in ideas there. And we're seeing one's already sort of popped in there. So if you go over to the left of the Miro board, you can see some different options. The top one is a sticky note there. So hopefully you can grab that. and there's different shapes and arrows, and you should be able to write text if you want. And I'm seeing quite a few there. So have a little bit of a play around with it. It's the first time. If it's the first time you've used it, I think you'll get the hang of it pretty quickly. But it's a nice way for us to collaborate in this virtual environment.
Yeah. And also we have, as you mentioned, other features and emojis that you can use. So some of the action learnings, people might feel love it or don't love it, or different reactions. And it's great to see that. So great. I think, like, you know, we got like the climate or environment factors coming in as weather. We have planning aspects like how the network can be disrupted or disconnected, the bottlenecks in the network. You have matters like safety, both perceived and actual. We have distance and convenience for walking coming through as a theme. And people have sort of circled around busyness of the road and not having dedicated crossing facilities, which is the thematic would be facilities for pedestrians, which is like race crossing might be one of that. What else? What else do we see here? We also can see personal matters like I'm short on time, I don't have time, I have to run, and maybe I have to jump on my bike or my car.
Yeah, just a little bit more on the Miro as people are getting themselves comfortable with it, which looks like most people are. But you use your right mouse button to move around the Miro board, and you can toggle zooming in and out, and then you can use your right click button to, your left button, mouse button to add things. On a PC, I would not know how a Mac works, so I assume it's something completely different. But this is good. We're getting some really good stuff coming in there, Hafez.
Exactly. So I think we have now understood some of those things coming out, blocking people from walking. And please remember them, because as we go through the rest of this module, we're gonna use those strategic sort of lenses to address some of them. But then in the next modules, in where and in who and how, you're going to learn more about how you address those blockers. So maybe I sort of summarize my message so far. Race crossings are good. They can be done in mass action. There are blockers, and we are going to go through how we address those blockers in this course. Now, let me jump onto a sad story. I don't personally like sad stories, but sometimes we need to know them, we need to review them, and we need to understand them. So this is the story of the sort of last few years of the life of Alex. Alex is still with us, but the life has not been really kind to him. But a few years back, Alex was a really wonderful, happy, upbeat person, being married, having 2 kids, having a really sociable life full of entertainment, owned a business, employed other people. He said his worst vice was smoking weed. So I would say really good life he had. And then one evening he comes out for a walk to take the family, the dog, for a walk in a 50K zone, in a 40K zone, sorry, is hit by a car at 50. There's no race crossing, no crossing facilities, no speed management, one of those suburbs. At the scene of the crash, he had impact on his head. He had fractures in the limbs. He had contusion, laceration, bleeding, internal damage, broken ribs. When we assessed Alex after the course of the crash, 50% chance of dying at the crash scene. We took him in the sort of air ambulance in a helicopter to the hospital. They spent 42 days in and out of hospital and inpatient, having multiple surgeries. So we did actually, in Victoria, we have one of the best trauma systems in the world. So we actually did what we could tactically do for such cases. At the time we had a longitudinal study, 6 months into the crash, we went to Alex and said, Alex, how have you been doing? We have provided you hospital, physio, counseling, and all the things that bring your life back on track. How are you going? And he said, hey, look, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm having pain every day. I have limited activity. I cannot do my business. I cannot socialize. My family life is a bit in turmoil. I have, all this sort of disruption in my life. My life is not in the good shape. So we continued providing services, help as we could do. 12 months time, we go back to him and say, hey, Alex, how are you going now? He said, marriage ended, lost my business. I have started gambling. I have disability now. Depression is here. I feel suicidal. So going from Alex of before to Alex 12 months later, race crossings can help us. Mass action race crossings can help us to prevent this. We're not going to leave Alex alone. We're going to go back to him and provide as much as we can for his life. But better would be prevention. That's my contention to you. Okay, now, race crossings are good for safe system, and Prue in module 2 going to give you even more details on that. But 4 elements of safe system are really compliant with our ideas about race crossings. They address human vulnerability, children, elderly, people with disability, people of different sort of knowledge and sort of awareness of the environment can use them safely. They address human fallibility by reducing speed and getting better judgment to both drivers and pedestrians to judge the system better. It's pro sort of human health because reducing the speed and give more visibility for drivers to stop in time and not hit them or hit them less hard. And shared responsibility by sharing the responsibility between you and me to design and plan the system better, do mass actions, between driver and pedestrian to use the road more equitably and more safely. Now, as I mentioned, we're in the next module, we're going to give you more reason why it's safe, they're safe system compliant, but this is a sort of, a taste. Now, what is a race crossing? And Ken gonna give you all the details, and his module is just actually a learning course for myself. So thank you, Ken. So in that course, we're going to talk about description and characteristic, but I'll give you a taste in the beginning. So an elevated zebra crossing that covers the entire road and is designed for accessibility for all and supported by signing, marking, lighting, and all those elements is a race crossing. Its characteristics are it improves visibility, accessibility, improve pedestrian safety, caters better walking environment for everyone, it's cost effective, allows free flow, and all those characteristics. So again, a sort of beautiful sort of mention of my friend Ken here. Now, a fun quiz. It's just not a quiz, it's just a question, but I call it quiz, but quiz are more serious. So what do you call this? Because we have all different names for them. What do you call this? This is a place, this is a facility, put it on the road. We call it a race crossing. What do you call them? And put it in the chat room, please.
Okay, well, while that comes in, I just wanted to clarify, there was a question in there. We will also be covering raised crossings for cyclists and shared paths as well. So not just the zebra crossings, which was a question that came in there, but this one in particular is on screen, is a raised pedestrian crossing. And we're seeing some different, what are we seeing in there? Just people calling it pedestrian crossing, wombat crossing, raised pedestrian crossing, raised zebra. They're the main ones.
So I think we have a sort of commonality of terminology, but that's something that we have noticed, and we're going to raise with our friends in the standards and design and Australia, that sometimes having a unifying sort of terminology will really help planning and practice. So semantic is sometimes important. So thank you. Let's go on and let's have a look. This is again another really quick fun quiz, and you put your answer on the in the chat room. The first, correct answer gonna get a prize. And what is the prize, Ken?
Well, it's always left to Kathy as to what the prizes will be. It's always exciting, and they will arrive in the post after the course. So
Awesome. So let's have a look at the question. A properly designed race crossing reduces pedestrian fatal and serious injury by what percentage?
okay, people are popping in guesses even before any options came up. So I like that. Okay, well, Hafez, I think we've seen all your answers except for the 20% have come in
Yes.
as options there, and then we've got quite a few that are not a few that are not even the options you put on the board. So
Can I say that the bell shape is around 40 and 70, and the correct answer is 70. So race crossings are a very good and effective solution. They're not silver bullet, but you know what the silver bullet is? The silver bullet is designing for the whole area with a mass action. So even if one crossing is not perfect, when you design the whole area with them and a number of other factors as in a sort of mass action plan, you're going to achieve fantastic results. So remember that also, I want to recognize here, some people didn't use the figures I put here. I like that. That shows that you have familiarity with literature and you know some figures that, we didn't put here on the board. So well done.
yeah, and prize going to Lander there. I've noted that. Back to you.
Oh,
Hafez.
love it. Well done. Well done. Okay, so now let's get our hands dirty. So imagine that you have a suburb in front of you. You're sitting at your desk, your manager comes to you and say, hey, look, you're my strategic planner. I want you to develop something that I can spend $500,000 on. I've got this money for active travel and safety. What can you do for me? And you have just like done the course and say, okay, now I know what I'm going to do. So you look at the area, and there are 3 different ways that you can strategically look at an area and develop a mass action race crossing program. They are pedestrian safety risk management and assessments, road and street function analysis and prioritization, and active traveler connection, which is demand. So we have tools and practices and knowledge about these 3 aspects to cover, but don't stop here. There are, as we mentioned, there are a variety of benefits for walking, and many of those have other frameworks that we can use and come up with facts and figures. So in this course, we're going to talk about these 3 key aspects that we think are very important, but let us not stop here to be more creative. Okay, let's have a look at them. What does it mean? So when we talk about road and street function, we look at the road system from a variety of perspectives in terms of what is the land use, what is the type of road, what are the type of road users, what is the volume of different sort of road users, what is the stereotype of this road, and all these help us to understand, can we or shall we or should we or must we put a race crossing on them? When we talk about demand, it's all about understanding 2 types of demands, and I differentiate between them. The current demand that you can go out and collect information and data on, or the latent demand that you might say there are so many pedestrians, especially children and elderly and people with disability, that want to walk. You remember the first exercise? Many of you said these are the blockers. All these blockers means latent demand. Blocker, latent demand. Remove the blockers, those demands will be materialized. And finally, the safety risk. We can look at any road network and we have tools to identify the level of risk and identify high-risk locations and address them. So let's go a little bit deeper. Ken, question?
It's just what Tom's asking about the research and evidence behind the 70%. I assume that's something we'll be able to put into the learning management system and the like.
Yeah, 100%. So, Tom, we have done in Victoria a sort of literature analysis and sorting of all the sort of pedestrian safety measures and their effectiveness. There are a number of research that points to around 70 to 75% effectiveness, and some of them are really sturdy, robust evidence. We're happy to share that with you. Good,
thank you.
So now let's go a little bit deeper, Ken. Will we? Let's do that. Okay. So strategic tools. What do we have to cover those three key areas? We have movement and place, as we do in Victoria, as we do in New Zealand, in Australia, and in many other places. And by movement and place, we mean that that planning framework that we can look at a place or a space in the road network and identify how much of a place it is, or it should be, or how much of a movement and mobility it is. So by understanding the interaction between the placeness and mobility, we can tell which part of the network we are in and what type of facility and stereotype should be there, and how we can design to cater for the needs of the community. And we're going to use this framework to identify where we can put in raised crossings. Our contention is across the majority of the system. But let's not jump the next few slides. Let's go there quickly and slowly. No, slowly, not quickly and slowly. That's contrast. As you notice, Ken, I love this material and the course so much that I get so excited. I just need to contain myself, but I can't. It's so energizing, so good. Okay, pedestrian network. So in Victoria, we have the principal pedestrian network planning, and that's all about going out or looking at your land use map and maps of activity, understand all the origin and destination of all trips, specifically pedestrian trips, to understand where your key routes for pedestrians are. We can map them, we can actually collect data on them, and please remember, this is our contention again, by planning for pedestrians and doing race crossing, you can actively change some of those maps. You cannot change the land uses because that will take longer, but some of those land uses that are not accessible by walking could be more accessible, which means the landscape of your walking network gonna change. So remember that these things are not static. Movement and place is not static. Principal pedestrian network is not static. You can play with them. So be creative, have ideas. Okay, road trauma maps. We all are familiar with risk mapping, but we have tools that actually talk about a risk based on characteristics of the network. And we are doing better and better as safety science models, and that we can use to identify those risk factors. Now, already you see where I'm going. Already you see that from that helicopter view, I put all these maps over each other to identify where am I going to do your job. But let's go a little bit further. Okay. Practical advice. Some of you might say, Hafez, yes, we do have movement and place. It's not well developed. It's not incorporated in the tools I have. Or I don't have actually those tools. I don't have principal pedestrian network. I don't have safety risk maps. What can I do? Do what I did. I forgot about all those tools, went out in a suburb in Melbourne and did the job. And I will be taking you through that exercise. I mean, that was also in terms of showing that, we don't have any excuse. Even if we didn't have any tools, we should be able to do the job. But let me take you through it. Okay, a few practical advice. In terms of movement and place, if you don't have the tool, you can look at your community activities, detect high activity areas, zones, streets, origin, destinations. Then look at the road facilities and road types and look at the narrower, lower speed, lower traffic volume spaces. Avoid those really high speed areas, or even better, turn them into low speed environments, as we talked about, if you're changing the network, and those will be places that you can think about race crossing. With pedestrian network, it's during the same survey that you're doing for movement and place, look at your community needs, talk to your people, maybe put on some surveys out or focus groups, or even better, comms and engagement. Go out, bring out people and talk to people, have an event, and then get those sort of, information, maybe count pedestrians, maybe monitor pedestrian movements, or use some of the tools we have for latent demand analysis, identify those routes. And finally, with risk, you can obviously collect crashes, collect all those pedestrian information, put them together, develop a map, and have those risk maps. So by collecting this information, you know what we're doing. We're creating a case. And the case says, if you give me an area, I can actually systematically dissect the area into its key elements and components of roads and street and network function, pedestrian and walking and cycling demand, and road safety risk, and understand where these overlap for us to provide. So our sort of, again, suggestion to you would be, when you have a sort of co-occurrence of these factors, you have a really, really, really good sort of argument for race crossing. Now, again, don't stop there. True and Bridge will give you more ideas how to be practical about identifying more location to put race crossings in. So even if we talk strategically, tactically, there are many ways that we can do more. For example, Prue will be talking about how there are opportunities to do them. I don't tell you more, but I tease you because Prue going to give you more information there. So, okay. I just want to pause here before just quickly take a 2-3 minutes coffee break or give you sort of thinking time. Any questions, any thoughts? Ken, anything you want to discuss?
Nothing's coming to the chat at this stage. I think, yeah, you're setting a really nice platform to get us into that example shortly.
Yeah.
I think one of the other exciting bits that people are grappling with often is this sort of business case or convincing others. So I think you're providing some nice tools or statements and general strategies there to help people, get some funding and for these programs and investments. So thank you.
I love it. So just like a segue to what Ken said, when we come back after the coffee break, we're gonna talk about some of those metrics, but then we're gonna sort of turn the table and bring you in. You're gonna tell us what is your case, what is your activities, how you're gonna use the course, so we can actually help you to do a better job at doing what you're doing. And then Hafez will be your team. You will be asking Hafez to go out and do the job, and you're going to be mentoring me and providing me advice to do a better job. So think about what we discussed, what we're going to discuss, then you're going to sort of help me to do a better job. How that sounds.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, so Ken, 5 minutes, we'll be back.
Okay, so at 5 minutes, I'm going to pause the recording and back in 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. A second. Beautiful. So I repeat that. I would take two. I would like to start with a couple of questions, and I would like to receive some answers in the chat room, please. And then we move into the. Oh, actually, we have 2 questions, Ken. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So this first question from Ben is around the manual for uniform traffic control devices, which is a Queensland specific document and talking about a 50 km/h zone. So that's a very specific question. I suppose one point within this course is that we try to be broad and at a principled level because we have many jurisdictions represented. But in general, yeah, well, particularly Queensland, a 50 km/h road is suitable for a raised crossing, so it shouldn't preclude that.
Yeah. And with Bill's question, so my answer to that, Bill, would be there are a variety of levels that you can use a raised crossing, and I give you at least 5-6 levels. So you can have a look at the mid-block or an intersection or a school crossing and put a raised crossing. That's very ad hoc, location specific. Nothing wrong with that. Please do. You can look at a street, a length of a street or a corridor or a shopping strip and consider a number of raised crossing across that. Again, good, nothing wrong with that. You can think about a church, a community center, a shopping strip, a school, a retirement village, and focus your attention around that origin or destination and develop raised crossings. Nothing wrong with that. You can look at a precinct, an art precinct, shopping precinct, any type of precinct and develop for that. You can think about a suburb, do the same. You can think about a city. In Victoria, we thought about the state. Our mass action covered the whole state. Let me give you another thing. In Southeast Asia, we're working with the World Bank. I would recommend to the World Bank to cover a mass action that covers the whole Southeast Asia. Put, I don't know, $500 million and cover mass action for race crossing across at least 10 countries. So, mate, no restrictions. Let's use our creativity and do something. No excuse not doing anything, okay? A question for all of us here, before jumping to, who here is familiar and have used movement and place? Familiarity and use of movement and place. Please put yes and no in the chat room.
Okay, so let's see who's been involved in using and knowing of the movement and place philosophy. So pop that into the chat. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Okay.
Literally beautiful. Tom, we're going to discuss the street families of that, sure. No, yes. No, yes. Beautiful. So we have a good level of familiarity with the movement and place. Okay, so let's focus on the second question. How many of you have done a walking demand analysis or principal pedestrian network analysis or any sort of demand analysis for active travel? So we have Simon saying yes, no, 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 no. I'm not surprised. Movement and place has got a good rep, good familiarity. We usually don't get that sort of pedestrian demand analysis, especially latent demand analysis. So I'm gonna sort of maybe give you more tips in that area. Okay, third question. How many of you are familiar with pedestrian safety risk assessment and have done pedestrian safety risk assessment in your job? No, no, no. Yes. Beautiful. So I think the land here is we are familiar with movement and place. We are familiar with risk assessment, a little bit less though. We are not that familiar with principal pedestrian networks and demand analysis for pedestrian. That's actually really great learning. We're going to tap into that in the next exercise, and also really good insight for my other course presenters here. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, let's have a reminder. We talked about mass action planning and why it is important. We talked about the 6 areas. We still encourage you to think about that. And I really want to also thank Bill for asking that really good question and taking that out of us to describe that. Okay, strategic metrics. Why do we need a strategic metrics? Somebody says, okay, what do you mean strategic metrics? What is that? So they are very important. If you want to show value or demonstrate value for investment, money is rare. Investment is not that often for active travel, and politician and decision makers' attention is scarce. So you need to be able to show and demonstrate the value of your mass action or your action for pedestrians to get their attention. We need to develop business cases and show sort of effectiveness and efficiency. We need to actually prioritize. So when you're developing a plan, you might identify 50 locations, but you have money for 10 locations. So you need to know the strategic metrics and also run more effective evaluations. So somebody invests in your mass action or your treatments, and they come back and say, how effectively did we go? And you need to be able to use those metrics to show that you have done a great job. So I use a couple of cases before I give you more practical advice from Victoria, what we've done in Victoria. In the UK, and the case for action that is a very, very interesting and effective and successful business case, they use a number of key criteria and strategic metrics to justify action for active travel. I want to point out to a few things on the list, and as you can see, they monetize them. Many of these metrics, you can actually find ways to monetize them. So I suggest in Australia, we can use Bitre, or in New Zealand, I need to find the equivalent, but you can find some of those metrics and monetize them. So in UK, in this case, they use noise management, better air quality, the potential of active travel, and economic efficiency decongestion as some of those monetized metrics. Using them, they identified a business case or a BCR, benefit to cost ratio of 5.5 for active travel. So spend $1 in active travel, you get $5.5 benefit. You see, very important, a warning. Sometimes when we do business case analysis or BCR ratios, because of all that latent demand, you don't get a good BCR. Sometimes you need to do the mass action first, get people out, and then justify your investment. So one of the warnings about using BCRs. Okay, another case. So when we talked about monetize, there are a variety of metrics that are not monetized, but it doesn't stop us to use them qualitatively. Okay, think about this. Many of the audience we're having for approval of our mass actions are not actually economists. They are politicians, community leaders, decision makers, and they are all human. So if you use the right language and use these qualitative measures in a really good comms and engagement material, you're going to win them over without even needing to justify the money. So again, please remember that. What are these? Business growth, it helps the economy if you have more people around. We have actually evaluated that. Property value increase, household and transport costs would be less as somebody pointed the tire. infrastructure investment and maintenance will be less. Mental health, as you mentioned, will be better. Social cohesion, social inclusion of all different people will be better. Transport choices will be more democratic, again, as you mentioned here, and social equity, and quality of life and wellness. So again, you have monetized metrics, you have non-monetized metrics. Just because they're non-monetized yet, it doesn't mean that you have to stop using them. Please use them. Okay. Let's go jump the ditch to New Zealand, to Auckland. And Auckland Transport did a fantastic job in terms of, sort of simplifying some of these metrics when they justify for their cyclist action. So what they did, they looked at investment in cyclists and how it increases benefit in society. The BCR here was 2.2 to 4, which is a bit less than UK, but as I said, there might be latent demand. They talked about increases space for social activities. So less space for cars means more space for all the other activities. Less pollution, fewer injuries, fewer health costs, and fewer household costs, and also active travel. So again, I would encourage you to, when you're developing your business cases, have a really specific sections on why walking is important and those are strategic metrics. They're really good eye catchers and convince people. Okay. Now, let's have a look, Ken, here. What is the case of our participant here? And I jump onto the Miro board and describe what this exercise is and what I want people to do.
Okay, so we're jumping back into the Miro board there, and if you're struggling to see this next page, the why, you probably need to just scroll down a bit, use the right mouse key and slide down, and you find the next page, which I think is where Hafez is. Some people are still up the top in the introductions, I can see, so you just keep sliding down or even zoom quite far out and you'll see lots more pages below there. Yeah.
Okay, so the exercise here is, you tell us, you have joined us this course, you're spending your hard-earned dollars on this course. What do you want to take out of this course and where you want to take that? Are you developing a program, working on a project, deciding about an investment, developing a business case? Are you an advocacy group or here for personal development? What is your case? What are you here for? Let us hear that, because that will help us and my colleagues here to later cater for your needs. Okay. Oh, people are active. Look at that.
Yeah. So most people have found that page. So we're down a little bit further. Anybody who's still sort of struggling there, zoom right out. But it looks like almost everybody's found that.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a theme emerging about design for pedestrian cyclist infrastructure and design ideas. Fantastic. Mr. Ken Bia gonna delve into that. Oh God. And Ken, again, your module is like a killer. I really love all the ideas you bring up and the practicality. Ken has condensed, I don't know, 50 hours of talk to 2 hours. Well done.
I do try to cover a lot there associated with the design and the engineering, and there's a lot to unpack in that. But there's some really important stuff to come with Bridget and Prue and Hafez, some more really valuable stuff coming. So it's good, and it's nice to see here a variety of things people are looking for.
Yeah. So I think what we also see is people talk about programs. People say, I'm here to learn how to develop a program of works or cover race crossing around schools. This is great because even if we are teaching you to design one crossing or develop one crossing or locate one crossing, we really encourage you to think about it as a program of works that would be more strategic. People are here to learn about safety improvements. That's great. People talk about improving the network for pedestrians using race crossing. That's actually really helpful. People are here for personal development or learning more, understanding more, and that will give them ideas when in future they encounter opportunities, they grab them because they know how to approach them. We have awareness raising is mentioned, justifying expensive race crossings, because we believe not every race crossing should be expensive, but if they are expensive for a good reasons, we still need to be justified them and put them out there. Because at the end of the day, we have a duty of care. For example, if somebody's sick in the hospital and they're dying and the treatment is expensive, we don't think, no, you're gonna die because the treatment is expensive. We do it. Duty of care. Okay. Somebody's here for a strategic development. These are like, my people. When I hear a strategy program of works, I say, hey, my people. Yeah. Awesome. Ken, what else?
Yeah, I was reading a few on some specific design characteristics they're looking for, and some specific scenarios which are good. And you certainly have all the contact details of the presenters. If we're not able to go into enough detail on your specific scenario, you can always follow up with us later. But see some around schools, some particular distance between crossing points, between car parks, and
so that's great. So now we have a better understanding of who we are catering for in this course, in this specific course for November. We're going to be remembering that in the next modules as well. Now, one of you asked, hey, look, Hafez, movement and place, family, street types, stereotypes, what are they? Let's go through them because I have an action for you to take with me. Okay, movement place. So this framework, I want to talk about this, but because we now understand that maybe pedestrian demand analysis and safe system assessments are a little bit less sort of understood or practiced by the participants. After this, I'm gonna stop sharing and give you a quick sort of tour of those kind of analysis and strategic tools. So just like, that was really good learning for me. Now, let's have a look at the movement and place. So what we have in a typical movement and place framework, we dissect the whole network into rural and urban areas because they cater for potentially different needs and different type of demand. We look at the different gradation of placeness of a place. The definition of a place is where people go to live their life, work, study, entertain, have fun, meet people, take a walk, do their life. That's a place. Or go to home and sleep. That's a place. Movement is about providing options for people to go from A to B as soon as practically as possible, as efficiently as possible. It can be using buses, trains, trams, cars, cyclists, bicycles, e-scooters. These are all considered like mobility devices that can be used. So from really high movement, which is like, our sort of highways and freeways and tollways, to least sort of, mobility oriented, which is a cul-de-sac where your residential is. So you see the picture? High movement, low place, high place. Now, this is the beauty of it. When you combine these two elements, they spit out different part of the system. For example, look at a city hub, a CBD area. This is a place that we have lots of placeness, all the cafes and cinemas and galleries and all the festivals and all the areas that, hotels and residential place. But at the same time, you have lots of movement happening. You have main train stations. You have sometimes like highways going through your city underneath it or over the top of it, or different ways that people go through this area. So that influx of activities, movement, and place is a CBD, and we have we call it city hubs. We have typical designs for them. Or you look at the local streets, and the local street is where you have less need for movement, less need for a place. But again, these two characteristics speed out a different type of environment. So local streets have different designs, different stereotypes, and we have different sort of approaches to them. Okay, you notice that in rural areas, we don't sort of consider like those like really high sort of places. So a clarification: by rural, we don't mean regional, because a regional town has a CBD, and that's a very high place. So when we say rural, it's actually rural roads, rural environments, not regional towns and cities and hamlets and all that. So a clarification. Ken, good?
Yeah, no, that's good. And I suppose if there's some people might be familiar with other names for some of these sort of categories. You picked the New Zealand one, I think, here. So the concepts absolutely apply, even if you use slightly different terms for those categories.
Exactly. Now, maybe let me sort of use this slide to a bit foray into the area of demand analysis. What do we mean by demand analysis? So we talked about all the ways that we can actually go out and understand like the origin and destination of trips, count pedestrians, have focus groups or interviews or online surveys, or other surveys that we have. For example, in Victoria, we have Victorian Integrated Survey of Travel and Activity, or you have ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics, surveys that give that information. So we have a number of tools that actually, for transport planning purposes, get the origin and destination of people and the means of transport they use to go from A to B. So that's one practical way of mapping your pedestrian trips. What is the downside? Sample size. Usually these surveys don't have good or enough sample size to cover a big area. They're really good potentially for high place areas like CBD, town centers, or regional town centers. But when it comes to suburbs and quieter areas, you might not get enough trips to actually have a statistical significance for your analysis. What is the solution? Solution is a couple of solutions. If you do a quick literature analysis, or I can actually share some of that with you, there are models, forecast models or predictive models that you can use to predict potential pedestrian demands. What does it mean? You look at the type of land use, the type of road networks, population, and a number of other factors. And you can use these models to translate them into potential number of people who are using your streets. We actually have some really more detailed models, but they're more expensive, that can actually speed out the route of them. So you have those kind of surveys, in the information usually available through geospatial databases. You have those predictive models. What else? The other things we have, as I mentioned in Victoria, is principal pedestrian networks. These are mainly subject matter experts going out and doing some of those analyses or doing some of those investigations and identify for a suburb or for a region or for, a pedestrian area, those kind of routes and demands. So again, so what I'm doing here, I'm giving you a number of areas that you can search in your jurisdiction and find solution for your developing that understanding of pedestrian demand. What else can you do? You mentioned here, I'm working around schools. Influence zone analysis. What does it mean? It means that you give out surveys to your students at a school or their parents, ask them to talk about their origin and destinations, the way they come to school, and their willingness to walk to school if the environment was more safer and more convenient. Influence analysis, you can do that as well. If you don't have any of them, I'm gonna, in the next exercise, tell you what I did without using any of those tools, just using my common sense. I went out and did an exercise. I walk you through that because at the end of this course, even if we're giving you all of those strategic avenues, we don't want you to stop and say, oh, I don't have them. No, we can actually go out and do something. Again, let's go to the next action learning. And I quickly move to our Miro board. So just come down to the next slide and I will show you how we're going to do this. Okay. Let me share my Miro board. Okay. Action learning number 4, where to strategically locate raised pedestrian crossings. We talked about movement and place framework and different functions of place and movement. I have put the definitions here as well. Please tell us where you want or when you would consider putting raised crossings.
Okay, and so you're wanting people just to put a dot, a symbol, a note, or circle it with the pen or whatever they want?
Yes, I love it because Ken, I was thinking putting a note and just name them. You just mentioned a different way. We are creative.
Okay, so feel free to do it any way you want.
Okay. Oh, one quick observation. As we're doing more Miro, people are becoming more proficient using them and using the emojis. By the second module, Ken, people are going to be amazing with Miro.
That's right.
I love human brain, how we learn so fast. Somebody talked about forming habits in children. I agree with that, but our brains are malleable.
Right.
Okay, people mentioned civic spaces, shared path connections, local streets, city hubs. Yes, I like that emoji. Somebody actually puts here in urban connectors. I would like to sort of discuss that a bit. Somebody puts a car in urban connectors. I think that's potentially a better idea, potentially. Yes, I think okay. I think we get the picture, and let me sort of summarize my thoughts here. We as a group believe that any place on the movement and place framework, apart from high movement areas, which is the blue areas on this map, you can actually consider putting raised crossings. There is no excuse we not consider, but there will be considerations. So when we consider, for example, people ask, hey, look, I have a 60 km/h area or street or arterial road. should I put a race crossing? We would say you could, but you need to consider that 60K is a bit too high. Maybe you need to bring down the speed in that zone. You do some traffic coming. You ensure that maybe the road is a bit narrower. It's not 4 lanes. So not only you can do them, but by doing that, you can provide for speed management and better safety. So even if in some areas on movement and place framework, like local streets, like city hubs, it's way easier to do them, we encourage you to consider. I love the person who drew a line between these 4 areas. Whoever with that orange line draw a line around them, Ken, that person needs to get a prize.
Okay.
Whoever that person is.
All right, well, we'll see if they come forward.
Please tell us. We love that. That's actually what we wanted to achieve with this exercise. Okay, now let me quickly check my here, check my calendar here. So we move from this exercise to the next exercise, and I tell you what's going to happen, because this is what I would encourage you to use all what you've heard today from me and utilize it to mentor me as a practitioner. Okay, let me tell you what's going to happen. This is this. Okay. Imagine that you are my manager. You have come to the office in the morning. You have called me to your office and said, Hafez, look, I've got some money sitting here, end of financial year coming 3 months. I need to develop a business case and spend this money, otherwise it will be gone. I want to send you out to this sort of, suburb in Melbourne to tell me what you can do for pedestrians. So I go out, do my survey, do my sort of quick study, come back to you, and I tell you what I'm doing, what I've done, and what my recommendation is. I would like you to observe me, and when the time is right and I ask you, put in your comments. Hafez, you could have done this. Hafez, you could have done that. Hafez, why didn't you think about that? Or Hafez, well done, you did this and I like that. Give me comments, okay? And use the strategic tools, the strategic metrics, and all the things we discussed. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, sorry, if I repeat myself, 3 things I want you to take away from here. I want to create empathy with the job of that working strategist. It's not an easy job, usually neglected. I want you to say, oh, the planner actually does something that is very effective. Observe what I'm doing and find ways I can improve myself as my mentor. Also conceive how to develop a mass action, potentially using similar approaches in your area. Okay. So we're talking about Melbourne. This is Melbourne CBD. We're talking about maybe 15K out of the CBD in a suburb called Caulfield. We have Caulfield Railway Station as one of the major transport hubs here. And the area that I'm talking about looks like this. We have a race course. We have shopping strips here. We have Monash University's Caulfield campus here, a railway station, a lot of residentials, a church, a community center, and St. Mary's Primary School and Lloyd Street Primary School. So what I'm gonna do, and what I did on that day, I walked from Lloyd Primary School to Caulfield Railway Station, around 2.2 or 1.9 kilometers. Took me 22 minutes if I walk fast. So that's the space and time we're talking about. Okay, I did the exploratory walk. So by having function, demand, and risk in my mind, I took the walk. I said, okay, let me choose a route, go there and come back and maybe choose other routes. So I wandered around as well as you do. And I went from the school, that's primary school, put myself in the shoes of maybe young children, try to understand if they see everything, they feel comfortable, all that, and walk to the station. Okay. Then I thought about function. Here, it was just like, I thought about the movement and place function and thought about the street I see and the environment. And even if I didn't have, you know, those information sort of, you know, in my head, or like if you are familiar with movement and place, we actually sort of really categorize walking, cycling, like public transport and all that. So we know exactly what we're talking about. But here I didn't have all the information. So I used just my familiarity with the framework. And I think that's enough for even a novice planner to use that. So what I saw when I was in the beginning of my walk, I see sort of mainly local streets, like 40K zones that could have been maybe 30. You have residentials, you have that sort of life happening. You have a sporadic sort of, you know, origin, like big destinations like a church or a community center, but essentially that's what you see in this area. You come a bit further, you pass your first arterial. This is a shopping strip. So essentially it's a 40K environment. You have trams going on. The road is quite wide. And you have like traffic going. It can be posted at 60Ks if you're not careful. Better be posted at lower speed, as I mentioned, 40K. It's got shops and restaurants and cafes. Occasionally you have more like sort of, you know, happening or less happening. Intersections are quite busy. So this is the type of environment we noticed. Then I turned at this intersection into this more significant arterial. So it doesn't have trams, so it doesn't have that sort of, you know, effect of lowering the sort of movement vibe of the street. It looks like a place that people want to go from A to B. People are going a bit faster. Environment is 60K. You would be risking your life if you want to go cross this road. So just like, you know, not really inviting space for walking, but it's not the worst. But okay, so this is the environment. Then we have a major intersection. We cross that, we enter a university precinct. I mentioned university precinct and the speed limit is 60. Is it compatible? I don't think so. Again, thing that I observed on my way. So this is a university precinct. So what you see a bus lane and number of traffic lanes with car park on the side, university this side, and you have a sort of a sort of, you know, football or sort of soccer sort of, you know, field on the other side. You go ahead and that would be your Monash University precinct. Then you have the main railway station here, and what you have is at the campus, the station, a race crossing, and you see the environment. It's like full of life, lots of students, lots of cyclists. You have cafes, you have a car park here, and you know, shops that way, and a Coles and a Woolies. So again, a really vibrant environment. I looked at this place and I said, okay, how can I sort of categorize that from a movement and place function? And again, please consider that, you know, this is a report. So I'm reporting to you, or eventually you're going to receive this in a sort of paper report from me after my day visit. So think about that, you know, Hafez is actually presenting to you a report of his main findings, and tell me what you think later. Okay, so I look at the environment and I say, even I sampled one sort of route, I noticed a number of different sort of, you know, functions. I noticed a local street functions here. It is an activity hub here. There's connection between that activity center to a Princess Highway, which is high mobility facility, and then a transition between that environment to a university precinct and a city hub. That's what I noticed. Then we talked about demand, and when I put myself in the shoes of a demand, I noticed a number of things here. So the first bit here I noticed that there is a station, university, a shopping center, excuse me, and restaurants. And another area that I want to sort of encourage you to consider, many of our train stations or our public transport, they have the ticketing system, and they can actually provide you with information on the number of people using the public transport. So at the very least, in this situation, I could check with the campus how many students they have, what is the presence rate at the university. I could check the number of sort of ticketing or number of sort of, you know, people accessing the train station, and that would give me a number of pedestrians here. But I could do even more, but just a few ideas. Then here you have universities. Even at the connectors, you have all the residentials happening. So it's, again, that confusion between movement and place functions. And then you have trams, shops, restaurants, residentials in the activity sort of area. And in the residential area or local streets, you have schools, churches, residentials, and commercial centers. This will give you a really good picture of destinations and origins of trips here. But also, as I've mentioned, there are a number of ways you can turn all of these into facts and figures. Now, crash history. So when I thought about road safety here, I thought that, okay, there are a number of data sources online that I can use. Why don't I use them? So I look at the crash history for the last 5 years, and the data was available on the VIC data website. Some jurisdictions have those kind of websites. You can get those information free of charge, geocoded. So I mapped that against the environment I was in, and I noticed, okay, there's a history of pedestrian crashes here, and some of them are around the city hub area. Some of them are at this like crazy massive intersection. A number of them are around the shopping strips, and less in the local streets, but that might be even because of exposure. Then I used my safe system assessment framework sort of practitioner or road safety auditor. So again, Ken and I can talk to you about safe system assessment frameworks or road safety audits. Another prism or tool or device you can use to assess your environment. I use that and I identify a number of areas that even if I hadn't seen a crash history, I would envisage risk. I would envisage a heightened level of pedestrian risk. So I collected that information and retained them in my report. Then I did another thing. I said, okay, first look at the current available facilities. So there were a number of raised crossings available or already out there. There were a number of pedestrian treatments at intersections like headways, or there was a pedestrian operated signal. So I collected that information. Why that information is important? Because when you're developing a mass action, you want to actually improve the current situation. In the next module, Prue is going to give you more examples of information you can collect to identify where to put your raised crossings. So, okay, so I had that one. Now I have this sort of really good picture in my head. If I summarize, I looked at the environment from my Google view and all that, jumping, went to the environment, identified, have a walk around, have a coffee, just like had some meal there, try to get the feel of the environment, look at the function, demand, and risk, and look at the current facilities. I'll give you a few clues here. I didn't talk to many people. And maybe I didn't consider a variety of vulnerable groups in my assessment, just giving you hints. Okay. Now, the question would be here, if I stop here and jump to my Miro board, we want to do some mentoring for Hafez. Let me stop and jump to the Miro board and I share what I want to achieve here. The point of this exercise is you put yourself in the shoes of one manager with all the things we discussed and ask me those questions, also giving me some mentoring suggestions. So both critiquing and supporting. Okay.
Okay, so back in the Miro board and grabbing sticky notes or just writing text there. The things that you believe Hafez could have looked at in more detail, or was really good, or any sort of advice in his assessment of that that route. Okay, we're starting to see a few things come in. We'll give this a minute so people can.
Sorry, I'll just quickly do something in the background. Apologies. Back. Share my Miro. Okay, I think it's Ken. My screen is good, like visible.
Yep, we can see. Yep, the Miro board there on your screen, and people are popping in a few ideas. I see a few still typing. So we'll give it another minute.
Sure. And with this one, I want to take a bit more time. This is actually where we sort of, understand how we have learned through this first module. And so it's very important for us to take a bit time and maybe discuss some of the comments in more depth.
Okay.
Oh my God, I already love this. It never stops to surprise me that even if you think you've done a thorough job, our participants identify areas that you didn't actively think to put in your presentation.
Mm-hmm. I'm just reading through a few now. They're very good.
Yeah. 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 Yes. Beautiful. Yes. Yeah. So, Ken, what I would suggest is I would go through the comments, each of them,
Mm-hmm.
and then what I try to do is do a quick thematic analysis of the type of things we have identified here as room for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And I will also share any other tools that I know of that can help people to address some of these questions.
Okay.
Okay, I will start from the left top corner. Ask the kids where they like to walk. Okay, so this is about understanding the origin and destination and modality of the trips of children. And also I can add to that, we can include parents because they are also the custodians and give permission. So this is a great question. how we can address this, and it's done in the literature. We have developed surveys that we can share with the school children and their parents and develop some solutions. Also, some schools in Australia and New Zealand have road safety or active travel champions. So there's a person in the school in charge of that, and the parents join, and they create those activities. So if I had gone to the school, they might have had some of those questions. So thank you very much, my mentor. I should have done that. Who's visiting the shops and why? Again, very, very important question. How I try to address it is by sitting in shops and try to observe people who are addressing them. But I would suggest that, as another comments mentioned here, during different times of day, you see different type of people coming out. For example, the elderly might be more comfortable to come out in a time that is less traffic out there. So yes, I should have done that. It could have been, again, a survey from the shops, or actually looking at some of those surveys or travel and activity. Good to know you looked at number of walkers, where there are many people on bikes, e-scooters, or other mobility devices. I actually noticed 2 or 3 people riding their e-scooters very fast on footpaths. So 2 observations. Even if this suburb is out of the e-scooter and e-bike trial line in Melbourne, we saw lots of those micro-mobilities. So imagine that we have that trial. This issue will become another really good consideration. So thank you, my mentor, for mentioning that. Talk to the community, schools, residents, university, businesses, mobility impaired, 8-year-old to 80-year-old, the sectors who might propose what you're proposing. Fantastic. I should have done that. And this comment is actually so we have a number of comments here that talks to that theme. People mention the walkover was good. For example, this one, the walkover was good, but you could have included more people in your team to include different perspectives. And this comment here says you should have looked at your pedestrians, and there are different communities and groups, and also drivers might have some opinion, or like businesses, including them as soon as possible is important, because many of our interventions fail, as you know, because we don't have a comms and engagement policy and practice to approach the community as soon as possible, get views on that. Pro has been really good at talking about community-led design that might address that as well. Are there school community hubs that use outside of school hours? Great point. When we go out for those site visits, we need to consider a number of things. Actually go out during night and day, potentially during different seasons, and also even times of day, and that is very important to go there. Student address heat maps, again related to the first theme of those surveys of students, considering traffic volumes and speed. Very important point, goes for speed management and suggesting a speed reduction maybe. Look at what transport modes the students are using. Again, thematically goes back to those surveys of students. Great point, thank you. Ask students what are the barriers to working in the community. Seriously, that's great point. Sometimes we forget to ask them. I did. Do you know if there are any changes in land use likely? Great point. What if we could suggest those kind of changes by potentially including some rules and regulations in new developments one way, or maybe turning some of those car parks to spaces for people or other things. Okay, is the crash data car crashes or pedestrian crashes? Dig into the crashes, demographics, and times. Again, very important to identify all crashes and then separate them for vulnerable versus car occupants, because some of these solutions we have address both of them, but some of them are better for addressing pedestrian problem. Good point. Ask your boss if he has walked the route with a pushchair or a friend with a wheelchair. Bridget, in module 3, gonna talk about all the ways we need to include everyone. And she actually has developed a sort of measure system, a sort of, a standard, sort of, if you will, to address that question. So thank you, my mentor, is a great point. Exciting existing infrastructure, can you physically put a PRC in these locations? As Ken will discuss in module 4, when we go out to deliver them, there are sometimes some considerations that might stop us doing them. But Ken will be talking about how we can overcome some of those objections or design sort of considerations. Church gathering days, very important if we have community center to understand where we have those sort of a mass of people coming and accessing the place. Maybe we can use them for some planning. And again, asking people why they don't walk, fantastic, including different abilities, important. Do other people take same route? Maybe not. Sampling problems. I should have sampled the environment maybe a bit more systematically. Assess driver compliance. So again, I should have considered enforcement and talk to the local school, the surveys. Again, cool. Desire lines, also this is the last comment, understanding not just the demand, but also the more location-based desire lines for pedestrians. I think we get the themes here. There are a number of ways that I could have improved my planning and strategizing. And as you have noticed, I didn't need fancy tools. Quite frankly, I didn't need those fancy tools to do a job. I actually try to bring my manager along to do something for me and for pedestrians. Now, let's go to the next one. Oh, why does it look like this? I stop sharing so I can do this. So I want to go to this one. And let me see if I can present it. We'll be showing it better. Excellent. Excellent. Now, before I sort of close my my module, and thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much, Ken, for being my sort of my friend here. I'm talking to you as I'm just presenting this, and your presence actually give me energy and human touch. Thank you, Ken. So this is my last exercise. We talked about what I did. We talked about how I could have done a better job, and you gave me ideas. Now I want you to go through all these solutions or develop other solutions and tell me which one you as my manager would recommend me to consider in my report. Is it a 30 km/h default for urban areas? Is it more race crossings at those side streets when a local street hits an arterial and people have problems? What about more race crossing in the local streets part of the network? What about pedestrian treatments at signals intersections? Traffic calming, using both physical measures or show the speed or show and tell speed like technology or other technology. And finally, better data and better planning tools. Please jump in and produce even more ideas. These emojis, they crack me up. I love it.
What do you mean by traffic calming technology there? Fez, what's the technology part of it?
Sure. So we can use sort of speed detection. One of the many ways that we can use technology to give information to our drivers. For example, imagine in the city of Toronto, Canada, they had this new sort of regulation about 30K areas, but they have a massive area of the city of Toronto covered. So what they did in almost every one of those streets, they put this technology that detects driver's speed and gives them information if they're going beyond or above the speed, but in a kind language. That's one of the many technologies we can use. Also, we can use technology at a crossing. For example, we can detect cars and detect pedestrians and momentarily reduce the speed limit through VMSs. Or other type of speed management or pedestrian detection technologies. I would suggest maybe we could detect children or people with wheelchair and do something more for them. So some of the examples to use technology.
Okay.
Beautiful. People talk about enforcement here as well. And what I like, so maybe I do this to show you how we are connected. If I find it here, many people say 30-kilometer default, and you're my people. I believe in 30 in urban areas. So thank you for saying that. I go back to my course related background, but now you know that 30 is in the back of my mind. Urban design changes that encourage slower speeds, 100%. We have streets for people using tactical urbanism or pop-up. Fantastic, they're low cost. We have seen their importance during COVID, so thank you very much for raising that. Physical treatments like narrowing the streets using like curb standouts or chicanes or bulb outs or pinches or all the different names we have for them. And should not all of them be considered mass action? Who said that? Ken, come on, this person needs a prize.
Okay.
Awesome. And speed indicator devices, so speed detection and indication is one. So I know that, you know, there's so much else can be done, so keep going. But before I go to my beautiful colleague, Prue, to introduce the next exercise for the next course, and for Ken to conclude this module, I want to just say thank you very much. My name is Hafez Alavi, or I say Hafez, I love you. And I really enjoyed the course today and your participation. So, Prue, over to you.
Hello. Okay, so I am going to be presenting the next module, which is the where module. So we'll be looking into where we can install raised crossings on the network. We'll look at some methodologies around that. As a precursor to the next class, we are actually going to be getting you to do a survey. So there's some homework to do, and we want you to get this done as soon as possible because we want to use some of the results in our survey. So just realized I'm looking at the wrong screen, so everyone's seeing the side of my head. Tomorrow I'll look at the right screen. So what we want you to do is your homework is all on the learning management system. So you've had a look at the link to that. I think Ken's going to bring it up on the screen. Perfect. So you go to the learning management system and there will be a link to your homework here under the first module, module 1. There we go. Why? So you'll get the local walking activity. What we want you to do is we want you to go on a walk first. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go for a walk in your local neighborhood, somewhere you walk regularly. You're going to have a look at some of the conflict points on the walk. Think about what you might do. So the instructions are all here. For example, from your home to the shops or something, you're going to walk and consider the key conflict points. So when we talk about conflict points, it's places where cars and people are likely to interact. And so we might think about crossings in those situations. And then you're going to look at what sites you might recommend treating with a raised crossing. After you've done your walk, then it's time to go and do the survey. It's just a short survey. And this survey is designed to capture some of the findings from your walk. So your recommendations and your suggestions about where there's conflict. Here it is. This all introduces it here. So you'll use the maps to identify the sites on your walk where there were conflicts. And then in the next question, you'll look at where we might consider raised crossings. So we'll go into that in detail. We'll have a look at some of our survey responses. In the course, there is also a case study there, and our case study this time is the little town of Bly Bly at the Sunshine Coast. So we'll be asking you to think about where we could put raised crossings to treat the conflict points around a school in Bly Bly, not in Christchurch. So that's your homework. It shouldn't take too long. We don't want you to spend too much time on this, but part of the reasons we're getting you to do the survey is to show you how quick and easy it is to collect this kind of data. You get the experience of being a participant as well as one of the people who opens up the data and sees what you find. So that's your instructions for next time. If you have any problems, get in contact with us. I think you've got all our contact details. Quick, easy survey. Here's Bly Bly. You're going to be planning some crossings around here. We've given you the option of putting up to 10 crossing locations in. Bit of a hint for that water tower there. Anyway, any questions? If you've got any questions, feel free to put them into the chat.
Thanks, Prue. And it is very self-explanatory. It's in there, but of course, if you have any concerns, you simply can come back to any of us, and we'll let you know. So just follow the tasks as written in there, part 1, part 2, the link to the surveys in there. So I'll just walk people through the learning management system. So you'll see, hopefully you've got in there, you found the course. There's a link to the webinar. That's for each of the webinar sessions to be able to go to that link. Course information in there's a folder where we've got the agenda and the Zoom troubleshooting. We will also add some of those extra resources that we've already been mentioning. Hafez will give us some studies and some information about the 70% or some of the other expected trauma reductions from raised crossings that we'll be able to put in there. Sorry, we'll put that in the resource section here. And you can see there's already some resources that are in there, but we'll add some more as we mention them. And then each of the modules will appear. We will put the recording in there afterwards, so you can go back and look and find the recording in there, and feedback and certificates at the end that will sort of become live once you successfully complete the course. So make sure you've got access to this. Jump into this module 1, jump into that activity so we can use all of that wonderful data and answers in the next session, which Prue will be leading. So I'll just check whether there's any questions or comments at this stage. Give an opportunity for anybody to let us know anything that they would like covered. And while people think of that, I'll say a very big thank you to Hafez for his wonderful presentation and taking us through those interactive activities. That was wonderful. It's good to see that people are really enthused about the idea of providing great facilities for active transport. They've got really great ideas at the big picture level, and we'll continue to hone that in further. So how do you access the learning management system is a question that's come in. So you should have received an email. It could have gone to your junk. I think it would have come from either Kathy or Safe System Solutions. And that is how you will access, you'll get a password to access the learning management systems. If you didn't get that, you're going to have to email Kathy or whoever sent you the email that got you this far. So at some point you got something that got you to here. Just respond to that person and say, can you please send me the link to the learning management system? They will do that. Of course, all the presenters' slides are in the learning management system, which won't help you if you don't have access to the learning management system. But we've got contact details in there that you can contact any of us. But yeah, just reply to whoever sent you the link to be able to get into this. Okay. Okay, so it looks like there's a different case study. Prue is, I'm not sure what's going on there. You're on mute, Prue.
That must be the old link. So I'll just check with Kathy that we've got the link updated. We will. I can put a link to the learning management system here, but they need to find their login credentials as well, don't they? So
Okay, it's the, yeah, I've just found it. If you click on the first link in the chat, sorry, in the learning management system, part 2, actually, the link that's in that goes to Swan Hill. I'll just display that. So we might need to just change that where we, so this one goes to Bly Bly and this one goes to Swan Hill.
You just refresh that, Ken. That's all done.
Oh, great. Thank you. Look at that. Okay, so yes, just if you go in there, refresh, and everything has been changed over. So thank you. Any other questions? Thanks. That's good clarification. We're getting everything sorted. Due date changed. Yes, well, we're trying to get this done fairly quickly, as mentioned, so we can use this data and information in Prue's session, and she'll be able to talk to some of this. So jump in and just knock it off. Hopefully it won't take you very long at all.
And also please remember some of the principles that we discussed. Prue gonna hone on them, but you know, like you can use some of them and impress Prue.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks again, Hafez. The learning management system is ticking along nicely there. If you don't have access, as I mentioned, please just reply to somebody and it will we will make sure access is provided for you. Search for that email and jump in and fill that survey out. Log in a few minutes early before next session. We might do a little bit of trivia to give out a few prizes and incentivize people to make sure they log in a little bit early. And then Prue's got a lot of wonderful information to cover and some interactive activities as well. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you in a couple of days' time.
Thank you very much, people, for your time. Thank you.